Ability to use blueprints with a foliage placed by foliage tool. Well, how come I can't? I guess we have to have a foliage type? Foliage type instance static mesh? I mean, supposedly in 4.9 they added this. Interesting. They've got comments from actually just this previous week. Where yeah, they're saying we're at 4.16 now, and there are literally no examples of cases of anybody getting this feature to work. So supposedly it works, but then it doesn't. So let's see, we should be able to make foliage. Like, there's a foliage type, which is in obstacle meshes. I mean, let's... It's just a static mesh. So if we add a foliage type here, component class, foliage instanced static mesh component. I mean, can we do anything here? We can override the materials or do something else with that. Instance settings. Because what I want to be able to do is I'd want to be able to paint on, you know, like a foliage type here, and the foliage type hopefully would use my blueprint code there to place lights onto something. So, you know, you could basically paint on mushrooms, and then they'd have all the sweet lighting and everything baked into it properly. So let's see. Test constant landscape will be test static mesh component. Okay, so they do allow component classes though, so you can have a component which does this stuff. Alright, so I think that was something that just does not exist. Well, they said it exists in 4.9, and I think it has to do with this component class. The component class to use for foliage instance. You can make a blueprint subclass of foliage instance static mesh component to implement custom behavior and assign that class here. So we can make a blueprint of this, and we can override the like end play or something, but I want to override the construction of this. So let's see if there's anything here that we can actually mess with, because they have a component. Man, this is not as flexible as I would like. Glow and foliage is not a thing. Yeah, well, screw those guys. We're gonna do it anyway. I mean, I was able to go get all this stuff working properly, so. So they only have it inside of begin play, huh? So let's see, I want to override a function. It's like initialize components. Trying to read all the things. So if you want a standalone component to be used by many actors, blah blah blah, I think you're looking for is initialize component, which you can override in your custom component. Remember to tick the auto in your components menu. Also note the initialize component triggers the editor also. Well, there's a couple things that we could do for this, which, but basically we could have in the begin play for this blueprint that it just kills itself and spawns a mushroom in its spot with a static light. But I doubt the light baking will work properly if we do that. So what we need to do is have this component inside of its construction actually like grab its actor and run all these things on it, you know, attaching the lights and everything else. Just, and we should be able to do that. All right, so we can override this mushroom and all that sort of stuff, right? So if we go to our foliage and we try to paint something on here, can we not paint on this? Alright, so we want 100 and 100 for the scale. Alright, so let's just do single instance mode. So you can pop one out there. So if we hit play, I need to mess with some of this. So time is blah and daytime. Alright. So I'm going to go to my sky sphere blueprint, and I want to change it so that it doesn't print all that out. So let's just bypass all this logging real quick. And there's probably a better way for me to have these logging systems set up. Maybe I should have some sort of boolean that I pass in for debugging. And I have it check. And I have some info log methods that, you know, actually do things. Alright, so we had play was called. And it looks like it was only called once. That seems odd. Like, I would expect it to be called 3 times. You know, 1 for every component, but it's only being called once. So it gets called once, and that's it. Well. I'm gonna have to go read some C++ code and figure out what's going on, because this is not acceptable. I want to be able to paint on, you know, mushrooms and stuff like that. If we can't do that, then that's just dumb, and I need to solve that problem. So I'll be right back. Well, it's one of those things, like, as an engineer, it's usually my job to solve these sorts of problems. And you can either kind of throw up your hands and be like, you know, that's just the way it is. Or you can say, screw the rules. I went to college. That means I can make my own rules. Like, that's just how this works. So, what do I need? I need to be able to be called in the construction of this component. And in the construction of this component, I need to add things to our owner. So I need to know how this works. Rules do not apply to me. No, rules do apply to me. But I can just change those rules when I want to. Did I get this wrong? You can make a foliage instance static mesh component. Alright, so yeah, it's foliage instance static mesh component. Let's just make sure we got everything all saved up in case I go insane and just like break everything here. Alright, so how does this work? This is a hierarchical instance static mesh component. On take instance radial damage. What the fuck? Wait, you can blow up the grass? What? That's cool. Alright. So I guess these you can actually destroy the grass and other stuff like that. I mean, it makes sense. Like receive component damage, instigator, damage causer. That's interesting. I guess we could get a flamethrower and we could light all the grass on fire if we wanted. Like it's there on instance take damage and all that sort of crap. Like we could literally have the grass start burning. I'm guessing if we wanted to. Alright, so foliage instanced static mesh component.cpp. Alright, so let's see, there's foliage instance base. Instance, blah, blah. So let's see, we have this foliage base stuff, update location from component, add instance base ID. What is this? Add instance base ID. Foliage instance base cache in component is created by construction script. Then blah 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 blah. Get instance base ID. Get instance base ID. Update instance information transformation. Compact instances. Removes. Update instance cache. Okay. So when do these get called? When we slap down a new one? Okay, so add instance base ID. We've got static mesh component 0. And is created by construction script. Creation method is 0. so we're going to get this thing, generate next unique ID for the component. We're going to create, alright, we'll start over. Okay, so we get a new base ID for our base map, and basically our info has like our basic information on our object. More info for this. Alright. What is this? UE30 blah blah blah. Alright, Visual Studio just locked up on me. I guess it unlocked on me as well. Alright, this was foliage add instance base. This used to be a crash on the editor in 4.12. Alright. They never actually removed their logging for it. Alright, so we're going to get the component level, persistent level, and get this instance base map, finder add, return base ID. So, okay. So where do we go from here? So we have add instance, which is inside of instance foliage.cpp. We have our instance foliage actor, which is just a normal actor. We have our settings, new instances, base component, static mesh, rebuild foliage tree, false. Right, so we add instance, which takes the actor. We have the static mesh. The component is test static mesh component. Right, we are in the foliage mesh info. This test static mesh component is our thing, right? Isn't that our component? Yeah, that's our static mesh component. We have create new component. And kind of what I'd want to do is this component would create a static child, like a child actor component or something else, and attach it. Would that be... Let's just see this. Whoops. Alright, so component, auto rebuild, tree, instance IDs. Okay, so each foliage type thing has like a single component which gets used. So let's start taking notes here so I can actually understand what's going on. So it looks like every foliage type has one static component. And then we have a list of instances which are foliage instance placement information. Alright, and then we call add instance world space, component add instance. And so static mesh component add instance at this. So we have a world transform, and we call add instance with the transform. And what we're doing is add instance of use instance static mesh component. So instance static mesh component add instance. This is a static method. So we're making new static mesh data, set up new instance data. Selected instances, add release per instance, render data marked as dirty, partial navigation, update index. Alright, so like we're using like some sort of instance array of meshes is what it looks like. So the foliage is heavily optimized for drawing just those meshes. So this thing only works on meshes, and when we add an instance, we do it here. So the question is, if we wanted to add stuff like point lights and all the rest here, what we'd want to do is we'd want to basically replace these. I mean, we could add stuff in here to the level, but what's probably going to happen if we do that is, you know, if you put down a mushroom, you can't get rid of it because when you put the mushroom down or spawn the mushroom, you know, we have like point lights or whatever the hell. So I'm trying to think. The foliage system obviously is built for foliage. That's why it's called the foliage system. And what we're really wanting is, we're not wanting a foliage system for this. We're wanting an easy way to place a whole bunch of stuff. Really? And it's just that the foliage tools are really nice for that. Because we could add an actor in here, basically. Like I could modify the static mesh component here, and whenever it calls add instance world space, I could have it call the component in Blueprint, and that Blueprint could spawn some point lights for me wherever I wanted it to be in world space. I mean, it's totally legit. That would work. But what are the consequences of that? If we added an actor which had point lights on it to the scene, we're actually going to have actors. Those things are going to be in the level. And to clean them up, I don't know how we clean them up. You know, like if you painted down a mushroom, we need to have that thing exist so we can, you know, cook the lighting data. You know, we need a static object there. So would there be an alternative to this? Which is, we could just place down an actor or something like that. And we could have a gigantic hack in here that when it calls like add instance world space or something, we just like return, and we just hack it so that the tool will just place down an actual like actor right there, as opposed to a piece of foliage. It'll just put down like a mushroom. And whenever this thing has like add and remove instance and all that crap, we would just like say like, oh, this is like a special thing, so just don't do this. And what would we lose there? Well, I mean, it's an interesting concept. You know, instead of, we would lose the instance-based rendering, so it would be less efficient. When theoretically it shouldn't be less efficient, because they're all instance, so they're all static meshes. Well, let's see, if we add an actor to the level, is it actually going to add it to the level for reals? Why don't we just go ahead and add a child actor component to this thing and see if we can get it to work. So we're going to save everything here. And we're gonna hack the hell out of this thing. So okay, it's gonna be like instance foliage.h. Where is component? Alright, so we want to go to this hierarchical instance static mesh component declaration. Then we're going to want to check this out. Alright, so this is going to be something that we'll be able to call. And we're going to want an F transform. Just like this. So what we'll be able to do here is we'll get called back. Let's just make sure that this compiles here with the static mesh thing. We're also going to want to change this instance foliage. And we're going to want to call component on instance created like that. So hopefully what will happen is when we place this object, we can at least get called back and be like, ah, we placed an object. And what we can do is we can find a way for this to work. Like, basically, we need to have these objects. Either we can use the instance system or not, or whatever. But this basically is we need to run a construction script which will place point lights into our scene along with this stuff. And then we'll need a way to remove those point lights when we like remove that piece of foliage, right? So we'll find out if any of this is worth anything. This is one of the reasons why I like using Unreal as opposed to something like Unity. When you run into some sort of issue here where you're like, no, can't do it. You know, like, you want to do what with the foliage system? Get the hell out of here, man. Nobody uses that. We can actually figure out some kind of solution. And whether the solution is always perfect or not is secondary to, we can actually, we can do a few things. Because I can see kind of what they were going for this. But it's kind of stupid that they closed this thing as complete when they really didn't. They didn't really allow you to put a blueprint in here. Like, sure, you have a blueprint component in there, and you can do stuff with it. But what people want is they want to be able to put stuff down using the foliage system, which creates more complicated stuff. And yes, there's a material there, but that's not all you need. You need more than just material. You need more than just a mesh. You need something that's gonna, do something with that. And I'm just gonna sit here and tell Unreal their business because I am incredibly arrogant and don't really give a shit about that. Just be like, yeah, like you should totally do all this stuff that I don't care about. Alright, so this is stuff. Yeah, it's real descriptive. This is stuff. Let's see, I've got this test static mesh component. Alright, so I should be able to override this function on instance created, and we're just gonna, blah. Anything was created. file, save. Alright, so if we go to painting and we do this thing and we say single instance mode, bam, we get called, and a thing was created. Yay! Okay, so we get called when stuff's created. How do we? You can just do a paint can on these things. Bam. Yeah, cover that in mushrooms. Look at all that crap. Okay, so how do we remove stuff? Lasso select, save foliage asset. How do we unpaint? Is it like crap? How to unpaint foliage? Unreal. How do I remove previously placed foliage? Just lasso stuff, select the foliage you want to delete and press delete on the keyboard. Okay, let's lasso select this crap. Come on, let me lasso select, you bastard. And delete. Okay, cool. So if we place down one, bam, we get a thing was created. If we place down like a whole bunch of them, we get called for every single one of them. Alright, so do we get called? Interesting. Do we get called on editor anytime else for this? So if I hit the play button, no, we do not get called on play. Alright. Do we get called? What? Do we get called any other time? Let's try saving this level and then reloading it. Like, let's go to a different level. Looks like no, it does not get loaded. Okay, so if we had something that got called when we deleted it. Alright, well, why don't what we do here, why don't we make a mushroom at this location real quick? So what we want to do is inside of this, we've got our transform, right? So how do we create actor? Spawn actor from class. Alright, so we'll spawn this thing. And the static class should be this test content here. We want this mini mushroom. Yeah, so we'll do this. And is there anything else we should mess with? We'll just see what we can do here. So if we go to this and we put down a single one. Oh, Jesus Christ. There we go. We made a gigantic thing. And it showed up over here. Let's actually just set it to 111. So it placed it right there, right? And it's correct. It got added to our scene just like that. So what we would want to do is, can we undo this? Aha, it did actually undoing deleted it. So I'm trying to think exactly what we would want here. Is basically we want to add a point light and we want to associate that point light with the instance ID of the thing that we made. Like we're constructing child components, which we're going to throw into the scene. Like we've got our static mesh, that's fine. But we want to make stuff here. So we want like, alright, so resident, keep up the good work. And go to sleep so you can wake up and do more work. So what we want is like a map, and we also want to pass in the unique thing. So we need onInstance created, onInstance destroyed. We're gonna have point lights that we create and that we place around this thing. So really, we're not creating stuff from a blueprint. We are placing some stuff into the scene based on these things. It should be parented off this. All right, so we need. All right, so we want onInstance created. We want the transform for that, and we want the instance index. All right, and then we want to do the same thing with the other one, and then we can do whatever the hell we want. Like this is actually pretty cool. All right, so this will be int32 instance ID. All right, and we want the onInstance destroyed. And we're going to pass in the instance ID right here. Alright, so instance created, and let's see. So we have remove instances here in our foliage system. Alright, we got it right here. Component onInstance destroyed, instance index. Alright, that's great. Okay, we can do it. We can make everything work. Just like that. And we'll have our point lights get created. We'll add them as children to our owner, which is our whatever the hell foliage actor thing. We can add them in the right spots. We can do all the shit that we need to. So this will be the cool thing. Basically, we'll be able to, like, we can't add a blueprint. I mean, we could add a blueprint. Like, why don't we try it? We'll make an array of actors, and we'll just have the actors, get created and destroyed. And what we'll want to do then is those actors that we create from those blueprints. I mean, we could make a child actor component and attach it. That might be something we should do. Anyway, this will be another example of the impossible being done because we can, because we're engineers. So somebody says, you can't build a bridge to the moon. It's in space, you dumbass. I'll be like, but what if it wasn't in space? They'll be like, you can't, don't bring the moon down to Earth. Be like, oh, don't say I can't. And then you type a few lines of code, and it's like, what have you done? You killed all the polar bears. I'll be like, yeah, well, the problem at hand had nothing to do with having polar bears stay alive, so I'm gonna declare victory and go home. At least they anticipated your solution. Don't move the moon. Don't do that. Like, too late. We've already done it. It was easy. Fuck. Shit happens every week. Don't do it. Don't do it, you jerk. Alright, so what we're gonna do now is we are going to edit our landscape test config. We are going to change our static mesh component. Alright, so we're going to add a variable, which is going to be we're going to have this actor map. And this is going to be a actor, just an actor. Actor reference, set map, yeah, map, and it'll be integer IDs. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to add this object by this instance ID right here to our map, and then inside of on instance destroyed, can we fetch from the actor map?